Hey everyone, you are listening to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. This little banter is about a car ride long and features your hosts, JJ Parker and Melissa Albers. JJ owns a tech company and Melissa has been a coach working with influencers for the last 18 years.
Hey, Melissa, I was digging through some stuff and I found the very first email exchange you and I have ever had.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh no.
It was August of 2014.
Really? Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, was I a snot?
Here's how it went down. I sent an email because you and I had a mentor in common named Dawn, right?
Yep.
And like I didn't know you, but I knew Dawn.
Right.
And you didn't know me, but you knew Dawn.
Yep.
First email goes, "Hey Melissa, your name's come up a few times as I've met with Dawn. I've been working on a 360 feedback for all our employees. It's been a good experience. I'd love to get together and bounce some ideas. I hacked together a computer app to customize and distribute surveys to all 35 of our employees. The app sets a circle of influence for each employee and gathers 4 to 8 responses. I'm wondering if you have come across a tool like that." Right?
Okay. Oh, no.
So then you go, "Hey, JJ, thanks for reaching out. How's next Tuesday look? I'm not quite sure if you are wanting some ideas on how to run 360s or need support in coaching, or actually how to affect change from the data you received."
Oh, well, those were good questions.
Yeah. And I go, "I wanted to discuss the market of doing 360s specifically for administering to entire organizations. Do you use any software tools? Do you think doing 360s company-wide is effective? Where are there opportunities to automate the process with new software and approaches?"
Got it.
And you go,
Oh, no.
"Thanks for the clarification. Yes, I do many 360s. I'm a bit buried at the moment. Can we look at a date in September?"
Is that actually what I wrote?
That is actually what you wrote.
Oh.
And so then I think at this point, I'm like, well, like this lady blew me off.
You know what? Like reading this now, like I'm feeling super uncomfortable because I think probably what happened was, now that I know you, like I could totally read what that email said. You were like, "Hey, is there a startup in here somewhere?" But back then I wouldn't have thought that.
There's one last email.
Oh no.
After your email, there's one last email from you. Because I pretty much dropped it.
Okay.
You go, "Okay, so my brain's been working a bit on your concept. I've changed my mind and I'm thinking that you might have something cool here." And then we met for coffee.
Oh my gosh, so that's the start.
Right there,
that was the start.
That was the start. So that was the start of Coreology.
Yes,
right?
it
With
was.
this simple idea that maybe we can bring, we started kind of at 360s, but we moved into coaching for everyone.
Yes, and for the listeners' benefit, Coreology was the startup that you and I then came to create and had for a few years with some really cool things.
Yeah, so we've mentioned it a few times on the podcast, and in the early podcasts, we didn't refer to Coreology by name. We always said something like, "Oh yeah, Melissa and I had a company together," or we were very loose about it.
Yeah,
and
on purpose for me.
Yeah, right. And then a few months in, I just thought, like, why are we not saying that company's name? It's like Voldemort in Harry Potter, like, "Thou shalt not name."
He who must not be named.
Yeah,
come on.
The company who shall not be named.
Yeah.
But what was causing us to do that? I think this was a really big moment for me and you.
Yeah.
That I think it's great to talk through because it was really weird. Like I had trouble saying the name Coreology for years after we shut it down.
Right. I know. I think I did too. And I think that my reticence was based on feeling so bad that it didn't work because I so believed in it that even though the experience was and remains to be one of the best experiences I've ever had in my professional life. I mean, I would actually say it's probably the number one best experience. I still was carrying around some feelings that didn't really make sense to that.
Yeah. So, we talk about failure, right? We were even talking about a couple weeks back was International Failure Day,
Yeah, right,
right?
right.
Where everybody, I don't think it's a very popular international day because
No,
no
but
one I knew was celebrating it.
in European countries, it's actually much bigger than here. Shocker.
Yeah. Well, we should promote it next year more. But yeah, so the idea, like especially here, right? Failure is not a positive thing. Like, oh, you failed, right?
Right.
And what's interesting is we had this business idea.
Mm-hmm.
We um, spent a lot of time on it.
Oh my
We put
goodness.
everything we
Hours.
had into it.
We did.
We put money into it. We
Yep.
had investors into it.
Yep.
We had employees
Substantial.
into it,
Mm-hmm.
right? We had so much into it, and then it didn't work.
Yeah.
It didn't work out like we thought it would work out or
Right.
visioned it would work out.
Yep.
Um, so we felt like we missed the goal, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we ended up having to shut it down, right? So financially, it was a failure.
Yep.
Um,
We took it in the shorts.
yeah, but like to me, there's so much good about that experience that it's hard to just measure it on that one
Mm-hmm.
metric.
Well, I know just as you're thinking about it, I was thinking, why did we have such a strong feeling that it failed? Like, because we didn't even talk about it. Like the two of us didn't even talk about it. And I think our partnership is one of the healthiest and most robust business partnerships that I've seen. And we still didn't really talk about our feelings around it. We really stayed connected in bringing everything to a close. Like we did all this stuff, but the perception that we had that it didn't work came from very specific expectations of what success looked like. I think for me, that's what I've really learned over the years in reflection.
Yeah. I one of the most amazing things anyone has ever said to me
Mm-hmm.
was when it was clear that we had to literally close the doors,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
it wasn't going to work. We had a meeting with um our biggest angel investor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had
Oh,
to tell
yeah.
him, "Hey, we got to shut down the company. It's not going to make it.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to make it." Um I remember at that meeting I was so nervous.
I know.
I dropped my phone
I know
on the
you broke
ground
your
and
phone.
broke
I was
it.
thinking that you dropped your new iPhone and
Oh.
shattered.
And we sat down and we told him, the decision that we made about the business, and he just looked at us and said, "Thank you for working so hard on this."
Do you know what
And
he
I
said?
thought that was like the most gracious thing I've ever heard.
But do you know what else he said? What I remember that he said right after that? He said, "I'm really proud of you."
Yeah.
That's what he said. "I'm really proud of you." And I think both of us were like on the verge of bursting into tears because we
Oh,
had
yeah.
so much amped up emotion and we tried and worked so hard and we were so all in. And we were very, I don't want to say that we were scared of his reaction, but we were so disappointed that we would be disappointing him. Like we had the
Yeah.
natural assumption that he was going to be very angry and disappointed. And he was
Yeah.
nothing like that.
Yeah. It was amazing. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
But you're right. We assumed how he was going to be,
Yep.
which caused us to just have a
Yep.
really strong reaction.
Yeah. It's interesting too because the premise of that whole business was the premise that we believed at the core that everyone should have an opportunity to see themselves, to understand themselves. And at that time, we were coming at it from the premise that the best way to do that would be as if everybody else weighed in to tell you what they thought of you.
Yep.
And while that's not completely wrong, it's actually not
Well,
completely right.
yeah. Well, you know what's interesting? So this is that one of the interesting things about that observation. That was our initial
Yes.
idea,
Yes.
right? But we had kind of pivoted towards the end
Yeah.
to where we weren't doing the peer feedback part anymore. We were doing some of the coaching that is just purely based on your own personality.
Right. Right.
Remember, we at the end, we were actually running tests on employee groups to see if we could get enough information about their self-awareness just by a single self survey.
Oh my gosh.
You remember that?
I
You remember that?
I didn't forget that. Again, work amnesia is real. That's real.
Melissa and I have like the worst work amnesia. I don't know. Maybe everyone else has it. Can't remember a single thing I did in the past.
Oh my gosh. I forgot about that, and we were super, super excited about that. And what happened is that person would answer their own assessment about themselves, and it was a really quick survey. Like, were there 10
Like
questions?
5 minutes.
Yeah, I
it
can't
was
even
really
remember.
short.
And it would put them into a model that would use the top 5 personality traits. So like your level of assertiveness, your level of extroversion, it would take those traits, and based on your own responses, it pushed that person into a coaching, I don't know what the phrase would
Like
be.
model.
Yeah,
Coaching, like a coaching,
yeah,
like
a
what
curriculum.
do we call it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we send them weekly emails about,
Yeah, for 10 weeks. For 10 weeks, they received a really quick email that said, hey, your survey indicated that you feel that you're this. If you are, watch this brief video for an idea on how to work on yourself this week.
Yep. Oh, that's such a good idea. We should dust this thing off. Um, well, so as you know, obviously, as we talk about this, right?
Yeah.
Like we're remembering all of these things that we did, right?
Yeah.
So like, uh, while this project did ultimately like financially fail, the successful parts were like absolutely amazing. Like
Yeah.
you're kind of like starting to like bring up like some of the amazing
Yeah.
work we did
Yes.
around self-awareness and coaching and things like that, right? And our core
Ology.
still our core ology, our still present like desire to bring that to as many people as possible.
Right, exactly. Yes.
The other thing that was amazing about Coreology was the team.
Oh, I know. I was just going to talk about
Right.
that.
It was me and you. We had a couple of engineers, John and John,
Yeah.
who's absolutely amazing.
Yes.
Mary, we had this team of people that were so supportive of each other.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. It was just like electric to be with that team.
Yeah. Yeah, every day was like new ideas, new work done.
Yeah.
It was really exciting.
And we were we were at Coco, which was a co-working space that was really geared a lot towards startups. So the energy of that space was also very much around growth and building and new ideas sparking everywhere. And then, we also had a whole cast of characters that were supporting us from the outside in. We had a board of advisors. So we had 2 or 3 people that we felt really knew us and were very passionate. And a couple of them had done exactly that, started with an idea, built a software platform, and made huge, huge companies. So we had a whole bunch of stuff around that was very exciting and very provoking.
Yeah. So as I think about like after Coreology, right, I think one of the things that probably hit me most was, not that we lost some money and things like that, but like the energy of that project went away,
Yes.
right? Like the creation of that had to stop,
Right.
right? And I didn't have any control or ability to keep it going.
Yeah, me either. Yes, that
That
was,
was really hard because, like you said, we all believed in it so much, and to
mhm,
just see it have to stop
right.
because
Yes.
we had no money. You know,
It
I
was
mean, it had to
depressing.
stop because we had no money,
And we were out of
but it was
energy.
sad that that was the reason, like,
Yeah,
yeah, and it was a couple
draining.
of years. So
Yep.
working on a project for a couple of years that doesn't create,
What you expect.
yeah, what you expect is it's hard to stay in that state for
Yep.
prolonged time.
Right. Right. But it is interesting because I think as you and I have started to talk more and more about choreology and the history of choreology and how we got our start working together, it's not a very far jump to see why we're doing what we are today.
Right. Well,
It's a pretty
you know,
quick little hop over a very, very,
right.
very small puddle.
Well, we are both fans of the Simon Sinek start with why
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like really know why you do what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and it's hard for people to, I think a lot of people, it's hard to get to a why, right?
Yeah.
Like why are you on the planet?
Yeah.
That's a heavy question.
Yeah. What's your why?
Yeah, what's your purpose here, right?
Yeah.
Why were you put on the planet? Um, but it's funny is that's a hard question, and and for you and I, it's having this second project where we're working on the same thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think brings your and my why closer to focus, right? Because like,
Yeah.
oh, here we are, like at it again, not even on purpose. I mean, we kind of joke that we didn't make the podcast of the self awareness journey on purpose, right?
Right.
But
We kind of
we
didn't,
kind of did.
but we
Like we
kind of
kind of,
did.
but we kind of were just hanging out and talking, and you were
Yeah.
riffing on this idea, and we started riffing on the idea, and here we are.
Yeah. I think too, I wanted to just mention, side note, if anybody's interested in who Simon Sinek is, his last name is Sinek, and he originally started with a TED Talk that you can find with millions of views. And it's a real, he's very interesting just in terms of start with why. If you're in that place in your life and you're kind of curious about what your why is, he's a great person to check out. But I also just want to bring back this idea that you brought up early in our discussion here, which is, the relationship that we've had with a thing that we did, that the expectations were pretty specific, and the expectations did not work out the way that we expected that we would, and so we felt a degree of failure in that. And but I think that what we're really talking about is our own emotions and how your own perspective frames your sense of if you're doing a great thing or not, which is bringing
Mm-hmm.
back to the self-awareness journey, right? How we have a certain mental perception of something, and because we have thought that for so long and believed that for so long, like we thought this model with choreology was it. We really were all in. We believed that. And we believed it so long, or we thought that so long that it became a really core belief. And then when it didn't work out the way that we had expected, wow, it just like was an undertow, right? It took us under. We felt bad. We had to recover. There was a recovery period.
Yeah. You sat in a hammock for an entire summer.
I literally sat in a hammock and I had a beer most every day. Not often more than one beer, and sometimes I couldn't finish one, but that's beside the point. I also listened to Jimmy Buffett. I sat in a hammock and listened to Jimmy Buffett for the entire summer in recovery. But I think I guess what I'm getting at now though is as we talk about that and just sort of unfolding and peeling back some of these feelings, it's really interesting. I wonder how we would feel today if given the same set of circumstances. I wonder if our awareness is such personally, and because there were times when I knew certain things didn't feel right, but I was really just hell-bent on pushing through no matter what. And I
Yeah.
didn't honor myself in a lot of situations because I was so hell-bent on proving myself right.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There definitely were times where we were just trying to force this thing out into the market
Yeah,
when we when a maybe a more centered or relaxed approach would have
yeah.
been better.
Well, it certainly would have given us opportunities to see what was and to see how our own interactions and our own feelings were trying to tell us, trying to tell us some stuff in the
Hmm.
process. And again, I don't think there is, in looking at it, did we create a business that flourished? No. Did we have great success in so many ways? We sure did.
Yeah.
And just
Yep.
framing that emotionally as we think about building future stuff.
Yep. Yeah. The if you zoom out a little bit and think about failure and think about things like I once did a talk at my uh, after I had graduated years out, like at my high school, like at the graduation.
Hmm.
I don't know why they invited me to do that because
That's awesome. Must have been your
they had
English
never
teacher.
heard. Yeah, right. They had never heard anything I spoke about before, and like, uh, I think they wanted a like successful former student. What they got was a um, fairly opinionated college dropout. But but what I got, what what I told this graduating class was that they should go out and fail. Like that they needed to remember how they were in kindergarten and
Huh.
how they learned in kindergarten.
Oh, that's
And the way
awesome.
you learn in kindergarten is like you just try stuff. Like you build a tower of blocks and then it falls over and then you learn how to build it a little better, right?
That's
And
true.
learning as a kid, as a child, is like a great way to learn because you mostly learned by getting on your bike, skinning your knee, right?
Yeah.
And
Trial and error.
you didn't make it through childhood by being successful all of the time. Like,
Or just
right?
sitting back and theorizing about experiences rather than having them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so, so getting out there, trying things and having it not work and skinning your knee is the most powerful way to learn. It's like how everybody learns,
Right.
right?
Right.
So we, but we as adults, for some reason, start to get into this mode where failure is not okay,
Right.
right? We can't have a failure in our job,
We're going to
right?
judge ourselves harshly.
Yep. If we do, it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be hard for us.
Hmm.
Um, and I just don't know when does that turn in someone's brain
I don't
where
know.
it goes from a trial and error method of learning to a like I must always be perfect
Yeah.
style of operating.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
really interesting question.
It's such an interesting question. And I think, too, especially as we talk about, what is the expectation of self? And when we talk about, the top 5 triggers that people experience through the self-awareness journey I'm speaking of, one of the triggers is fear that I'm either not good enough or I don't have enough.
Hmm.
And that triggers so much emotion in people that spools people into all different directions. So it's one of the primary triggers, and that is such a good question, is who plants that? Who plants that trigger? Where does that happen?
Yeah. Is it maybe it's society? Maybe it's just how adults mature. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think too, like that. Yeah, exactly. And maybe it's, your parents had their own failures and they never got over them and they want their kids to not
Yeah.
have those. So they put a lot of that pressure and expectation
Yeah.
on the generations down, and it just continues to proliferate.
Yeah. I remember whenever I would tell anybody that we shut down Choreology, like the the reaction was always like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like, "Oh, that's
Yeah,
really too bad."
like there was a
It's just
death.
like a
Hmm.
yeah, like someone died.
Someone died.
And and I always kind of thought that was a funny reaction because it's like, well, if you just step back, right? It was a startup software company. Like the likelihood that it was going to succeed was very, very low to begin with, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Less
The
than 1 in
stats
10.
the stats on these things are not like good, but I would have felt worse if we hadn't tried,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes.
The things that actually kind of haunt me or the things that stick in my head are more often the things I didn't do than the things I tried and failed at,
Yes.
you know?
That's very, very true. That, and there's a whole lot of video floating around with Coreology. That might haunt us too someday, because some of them are.
It was all mostly you on camera.
I know. That's what I mean. I do remember one time filming. I put it on YouTube. I do remember one time I had my hair in a ponytail, and you never say things that are like. It's always funny when you give critical feedback, as you will just deliver it like, this is the way it is. And I did not feel good about how I looked at all. I knew it wasn't going to be good. And you looked at me and you said, that ponytail is not your friend. I love that. It cracks me up. I still laugh about that sometimes. Anyway, this has been such a good conversation, and I'm really glad that we've been able to sort of unpack Coreology, because we've actually never had this kind of conversation together about it, and I'm glad we were able to do it here.
Yeah, that's a really fun thing about even this podcast is that it kind of gives us an opportunity to sit down and talk about some things that maybe we just don't come up in like normal conversation, right?
Yeah. And
or at least it forces us to deal with the things we don't want to talk about. Maybe.
No, it couldn't be that. That's for sure. It's not that. Silly. Well, I do think it's kind of interesting though, like when in reflection, as we've been talking about being aware of ourselves and having more awareness in the moment, I think that there's so many lessons in this story that really go hand in hand with the opportunity to understand our feelings about something, like have a feeling about something and just trace it back. Like, where does that come from? I mean, I think by us having this kind of conversation, it really helps us understand what are the primary feelings that we had around that. Because you know what, as we continue to grow and build, we may start another 10 companies together. I'd much rather know what's behind those feelings so that they don't get carried through to the next stuff.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think it's really good.
Yeah. And, you know, there's people will have failures, you know, they'll think of failures in lots of different ways, like little ones, big ones. I mean, companies, relationships, like all sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
And just remembering to kind of zoom out on some of those things, right?
Yeah, and allow yourself to change the perspective just a little bit about why you think it's been a failure and what parts of it have been wildly good.
Yep. What's making you feel certain ways could just be the story that you've decided to put around it.
We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. Our mission is to help people become happier and more effective by gaining insight into their own thoughts and feelings. We'd love your support. First, share this podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Second, leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast site. This helps others discover the podcast so we can reach more people. And third, sign up for our newsletter at theselfawarenessjourney.com. This will help us communicate better with you and build our community. Thank you so much for joining us in the Self-Awareness Journey. We'll see you next week.